5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
Discovery's 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Liftoff of mission 41D, the first flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
All right, welcome guys to D2M, the show of the hour. This is episode number 2 on this channel, and today's episode is going to be very similar, just like the last one. We have 2 tracks to show you that we have made during this time. We have some opinions about them. And in the third point, we are going to show you some resources that you can use as a beginner producer or as someone like us who is making music at home that you can use to get inspired, or if you have any problems or questions that need to be answered, you can use these resources that we are about to show you in the third point. So my name is Pete.
I'm Gus.
We are your hosts. Let's get into it.
And feel free to leave comments down below. Okay, so now that we have listened to your track, Pete, what's it called?
It's called Destiny.
Destiny, all right.
Yep.
So why do you call it that?
Well, unlike my first track that we heard in the first episode, which was called Embraced, before I made this track, I was playing some games online and some videos, just like an old game, which is one of my favorite, called Prince of Persia Warrior Within, which is a sort of I mean, people know what Warrior or Prince of Persia is.
Right. Yeah.
It's an old game, and that had a song in it or a soundtrack during one of the cutscenes that really caught my attention, and I didn't want to do something similar, but I got the inspiration from there, and that's why it's called Destiny, because it was like, okay, destiny of the player or destiny of you as the composer or the listener. It wasn't anything elaborate at this time. It was more of an impulse name that I gave the track. But I think if you listen to the track, due to the fact that I used a little bit of strings, a little bit of synth, and it has a really like a pulsating part in the middle.
Yeah.
With the low strings, it really just gives that, that game type of feel to it. I could really imagine it being in some type of a warrior game or something.
It's very interesting that you say that, because that's exactly what my impression was. It's like, to me, it's like listening to the song. It's kind of like a journey, and it has the underlying like beat and rhythm, which kind of gives it some consistency. But it has so many different sounds that give me so many different feelings, and remind me of so many different things and like games that I've played. For example, there's this part that reminds me of like playing RuneScape, being in the wilderness, being hunted by like player killers, or another instance in the song where it's like it makes me like remember the Nitrom games again.
Yeah.
Like
I'll tell you something. I actually felt like listening to it again to remember what it's like. I feel like it could be the starting theme of a Dungeons and Dragons role-play types thing. We have the theme or the theme of the story, and then we have the team players come together, and then this sort of Pat comes in with the synth main riff, and it as you said, it doesn't have a really dominant beat, just like the last one had, but this has a pulsating bounce to it from the riffs and from the whole thing. So it gives it a beat in underlying beat, but it also gives it that game type feel. Yeah. So Dungeons and Dragons would be, which we both know. I don't know if people know it. That's a pretty popular role playing game. But I think it could be a theme song for that, or for a story.
Yeah, it's very ambient. It's really nice to like have for example, if you're playing, I can imagine having this in the background. Definitely.
Yeah.
Although I feel like that's its strength, and both its strength and its weakness, because it gives so many different feelings and experiences, because it has so many different like sounds. I feel it makes it very interesting to listen to, because it evokes so many things, but also it kind of lacks that like consistency, like somewhat like a red line that's going through it.
In terms of instrumentation, you might be right.
Right.
I admit, but if you think about movie music or something, it changes very rapidly, especially if you're in a fight scene, or it changes very suddenly. So there's not this gradual change from one part of the song to the next and this between part where it's sort of, okay, you can anticipate what's coming, but you have dramatic scene and then you're back to a calm state. So it's very, very emotion provoking, or it's very sudden. So those are not consistent either. But in terms of like song wise, not soundtracks, but song wise, it might be a weakness. I admit that.
Right. So basically, it's a difference of the purpose. Like if you're making this as a song, it could need some more consistency. But if you're making it as a soundtrack, like the music can change. Like, it's not dependent on consistency. It can change depending on like the story or the tone change of what's happening.
Or the mood. Yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because if you look at normal like songs that are made by songwriters that will be performed live or on a CD or whatever, those have a consistent or a structure in the sense that, okay, you have an intro, you have a verse, you have a hook or a chorus, you have a pre-chorus, and those sort of now obviously this structure varies within the genre or between genres, but there's a song structure to it. Now, a soundtrack to a movie or to a game is very much different because it's not dependent on the structure so that people can remember it. It's not made for you to remember, but rather to accompany the scene that you're seeing visually so that you have a sort of another sense attacked by the movie or the game, which is your hearing. You have an accompanying soundtrack that depends not on the structure but rather what you're seeing on a screen, whether it's the mood, whether it's the quickness of the scene, whether it's a fight scene, there's changes back and forth and stuff like that, or it's a calm ambient scene where you need some more, like in the middle part where it goes down to the real pulsating low string part rather, and that pad, and the main riff is sort of lowered a little bit, and it's what I hear when I hear my own this song is really that destiny part where you're like, okay, this is something's going on, and then in the very last part where the little thinner synth comes in, right? So there's pad low strings and a little bit of top, so it sort of loosens up a little bit again. Right. It gives you a little bit of sense of, okay, now we are not as into the fight or whatever it is, not as dramatic, but we are loosened up a little bit, but we still have that little bit of, I don't know if you could call fear or that little bit of anticipation into it when it ends with it's not a big bang, but it ends with a crash symbol.
Right. So you would then imagine that this music, if this was like the background, the soundtrack to like a movie, it would be during like a fight?
Not specifically for a fight because it's not as rapid. But for example, let's connect it to Lord of the Rings, right? Where the whole thing is based on a journey to the mountain to burn the ring, right? And there are a lot of scenes in there, or scenes, not sins, scenes, that are showing the characters from a very total point of view. So it's not a close shot, but a very wide shot, where they sort of climb up the mountain, or you see Gandalf going in the wilderness. Yeah, so it's like, so we have the anticipation of, okay, we are traveling somewhere that is dangerous, somewhere that is dark, but we are not in immediate danger. Okay, we don't have, orcs coming down the hilltop or the hill and stuff like that. So we are not in that immediate fight scene, but we have that pulsating, okay, we are on a journey, we are going somewhere. It's sort of that ambient type thing, like as you said, it has that little ambience to it, but it still has that underlying power, I guess you could call it. That is an adventure scene that I could imagine it, just like in a Dungeons and Dragons game where you have, okay, people traveling from a rainy forest to a tavern where you meet an old guy who does all sorts of stuff to you or with you or it's those ambient scenes that I could imagine this in.
Gives you blueberry marshmallows with octopus candy and spaghetti,
or hands you a magic rod for some weird reason.
No magic rods.
All right, that was an insider joke, guys. We have to get back to D&D because other people on the other side of the internet won't understand this. So let's leave outside joke or inside jokes outside of this. Inside, outside. Jesus Christ, I have to get my head straight here.
Inside, outside.
Exactly. A little opera in there. This is a music show after all. So yes, it's the sort of ambient scene that I could. That's the short answer to your question. That's why I can imagine this track in.
But like, but even though if there isn't like there's not a need for consistency, like in the short term in terms of soundtrack, I feel like there needs to be some sort of consistency in the long term. For example, if you think Lord of the Rings, the do 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 do.
Yeah.
Like whenever you hear that, you just kind of like immediately, think.
You know what it is.
You immediately know what it is. You know kind of what's happening. It's the tune of the heroes. They're kicking ass. So I feel like you kind of want a certain consistency, like in the long run, like. You want themes that you can relate with certain feelings, but you want themes that you can relate with certain feelings or characters.
Yeah, I mean, those are called the character themes in movies. Like Jack Sparrow, and those actually have a certain name. It's not just like Pirates of the Caribbean soundtrack, but inside of that you have a certain theme song, or a very famous one, the Darth Vader theme from Star Wars, right? As soon as you hear the marching theme, you know which character it is, you know which scenes you might have heard it in.
Yeah.
And with consistency, I think you're right in the sense that in one soundtrack, if you're doing a soundtrack for a whole game or a whole movie or whatever, then you need a consistency in the sense that you have to use same type of instruments. Meaning, if you start out with a synth-based track, then the next track cannot be some native-based or acoustic-based thing, because that in that sense you don't have consistency, and it's all over the freaking place.
Right. It creates a whole different tone.
It gives a whole different tone, and it just doesn't go with the movie or the soundtrack. It sounds odd, like it's out of place. So in that sense, if you that's what you're referring to as long term, I think yes, you have to have some consistency in that sense. But as I said, the consistency in the short term, like within a song or within a scene, that can change very dynamically.
Yeah.
Like movies and games are not static, so it's natural for those type of songs to be a little bit more unique than a song that is written by a songwriter.
All right.
All right. Anything else that you would like to know?
How was the making of the track? Like, did you find anything difficult?
Yes. Actually, I did. The thing is, sometimes when I create a track, it's like if you have inspiration, then you can put out a track in a few hours. At least that's how is it with me. Sometimes I can put out a track in 2-3 hours. It depends on how much time do I have. And then, day after day, back to back, I can put out a few tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are times when I don't have inspiration or I didn't hear anything that would go, okay, I can make something similar. I think I can, start. That's a good starting point for me. And then there are weeks when I'm like, I have nothing to. And with this track in the middle, where the what I call again the low string part, before that I put in that sort of that low string part. It was for me was a sort of a transitional phase, because what I was doing is until that part I had great, I was put this in, put that in, I was doing my stuff. And then after a point, it just as if my mind went blank and I had nothing. I'm sitting there, I'm going, where from here, guys? Like, give me something.
What am I gonna do?
Exactly. And then I put it away for a week. And after a week, I was like, I should finish that track because otherwise I can't do stuff with it, right? So I went back to it. I re-listened to what I had. And I was like, okay, let's put a transitional phase in, something more of a low, not as dramatic, not as how should I call it? Not as dynamic as the part before, not as more instrument or not as much instruments, as many. So I put that in, and then half a week later I got an inspiration again. So what I found when I made that track and a couple of others, and generally what I find about composing is interesting and sometimes it's hard, is when you lack inspiration and sometimes your mind just gets blank. With composing, I find that it's not as consistent as, for example, writing a book or making a movie or something.
Yeah.
Because if you're making a movie, you have a storyboard, you have a script, you have a screenplay that you can sort of follow. If you're the writer and if you're the director, obviously it's given to you. But with composing, it's skewed. It's skewed in the sense that sometimes there's a lot of stuff that you can do a lot with, and you can make amazing things. And there are times when there's nothing in the entire world, and you're like, okay, guys, give me something because I'm empty. So when I made that track, that was what I found hard. Number one. Number two is that whole thing of finding those riffs that work together with without putting a very dominant beat in it, so that have that pulsating feel to it, but getting that pulsative feel without a drum or some type of percussion that is dominant enough is very hard. I think, in my opinion, as a beginner. For a pro, it might be a little bit easier, but as a beginner, I had to find some ways to get around that because, as I said in earlier episodes, one of the things that I start with in the foundation is drums, because that gets you into the groove, that gets you into the sort of the feel of the track, the song. And if you're left out any song, if you leave out the drum, the beat, the one that gets you the tempo, that gets you the feel, the bounce. If you're talking about dance music, a lot of dance steps are based on the 4/4 drum beat. If you leave something out, like something like that out, it's really hard to get a feel for that, and you sometimes get lost in the track itself. So that was a little bit hard.
But so if I'm like sitting there grinding on my melody and chords and composing like the whole day, just like grinding away hours, like, and I get stuck, like I'm in the middle of my piece, I've been grinding away for hours, and I'm stuck, I don't know what to do. What should I do? Should I like wait to get inspiration, or is there like some way that I can like try to grab it instead of wait?
See, the thing is, if you're home, I mean, it depends, because if you are someone who is doing this for a pro and you're pressured by a deadline, because, for example, you're doing this for a game or a movie or whatever, then you have a certain thing that's in the back of your mind going, okay, I have to complete this to X number of date, right? But if you're at home and you're doing this like us, like doing this for pleasure,
right,
and then it's better wait, because, and again, I can go back to Michael Jackson, because he said in a interview when they asked him how does he write a song, and he goes, I let the music write itself, get out of the way of the music. Now, what does that mean to me, as someone who is trying to make music, that just means don't force yourself, because if you've been grinding at it for hours,
Right.
and just to finish it, just to get it over with, you're trying to finish it, then it won't be genuine. It won't. You have to trust your gut, even if it feels odd at first. You have to trust your gut. Obviously, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but I think what he meant there was get out of the way of the music and let it write itself, because eventually something will pop into your head from a song that you heard or that you know, and then at least that's how it is for me. If I'm stuck with a track, I might go away and listen to some other songs, because that will get me some inspiration, beat wise or melody wise or harmony wise or whatever.
Likewise.
But I think it's better to put it away, even if it's for a day or two, and then get it back and take it apart again and see what's up, than force yourself. So if your question is, should you wait if you're stuck? Yes, you should wait, or try to get around that by listening to songs or watch a movie or something. Get your mind away from the composing process, because I feel like it can happen that you're stuck and your mind goes blank because you're stressed that you want to finish it, and you put the stress on yourself. It's just like when you take an exam at uni or high school or whatever, you might have studied the whole thing, right? And you might know it, but if you're blank, your mind goes blank because of the stress and because of the fact that you have this pressure on you. It doesn't worth anything if you have studied the material, if you cannot put it into words, or in this case notes and a composition. So my short answer is yes. Actually, wait or get around that.
Right. So you should just chill out like a caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland.
Yes. Yeah.
Chill out, dude.
Exactly. Just chill out, sort of relax. Okay, I can come back to it later, watch a movie or two, listen to some songs, and then eventually you're gonna get inspirations anyways.
Go for a walk.
Or go for a walk, because fresh air cleans your mind out. Or go for a run, or go for anything.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Let's
You're
move
welcome.
on to the next track then.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, now that we have heard track 2, I have a few questions / suggestions, Gustav.
Right.
First of all, the name Joyful Jig.
Oh yeah, the best of names.
It's a great name. It's a unique name, that's for sure. But where did you get the name from?
Well, to be honest, I was just finishing up the melody for today, and I hadn't come up with a name. Because when I made the song, I didn't like. I knew that I wanted to make it a bit like chill, because that's the thing. I wanted to make it like a lo-fi, chilled, like kind of hip hop music. I guess it's not hip hop yet because it doesn't have that sweet beat, but I wanted to make it chill, like ones that you can find on YouTube that you can like study and relax to. But I didn't quite know what kind of mood I wanted it to have, like whether it was going to be joyful or when it was going to be sad or if it was going to be melancholic. So today I just when I was just finishing it up for like the episode, I kind of like, well, what's some kind of fun name that might just fit? Joyful Jake. Yes, I'll go with that. It just popped up in my head and I went with it. So I guess it's gonna change for the future, but I don't know. Maybe I'll keep it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have given a suggestion here because it's called joyful jig, so we can probably have an idea of what that mood is going to be. I have a question though about the well, it's a 21-second track, so it's not. Could be an intro. And I probably tell no secret that it has two versions. Am I right?
Oh, yes. Well, I first made one with like a bass because I wanted it to. I wanted to have a bass in there, but then I realized that it didn't. I wasn't happy with it, so I tried experimenting with other things like other instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't go so good when I changed the bass with like a tenor sax. The sax is just like. I was like,
that's a pretty lead instrument. Change the bass to.
So, yeah,
I would.
Mm-hmm. I was just scouring for a different instrument. So I found one of those bells, which was like generated by the plugin called Citrus on FL Studio. Mm-hmm. And so I used one of the bells there, and I feel like that's made the song a bit better.
So you basically made that line from a bass line to a harmony line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not good at making bass lines, but I was just like, yeah, basically.
No, I like both, but I think, and here comes my suggestion, don't take the bass out.
Right.
Because I liked the first part and the second one as well, but I felt that in the second part, it was lacking in the low end.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe put the bass a little bit if you're going to make it a little bit longer, which I think you should.
Right.
Because honestly, I was just a listener, not a composer in this point. But I already was kind of coming up with some melody lines for it because it really had that little joyful pop sounding sort of moods. So you could probably put some bass into it as well as some type of a string. I don't know if I would prefer a guitar or effective string in there. But it wouldn't hurt it.
Right.
Wouldn't hurt the track to put some low end to it and some lead into it, because it's doing great with the bells and the harmony and the synth, which is the harmonic part. It fills up the track, so it's full. But the top, the lead end, and the bass end, the low end is a little bit lacking. Now, due to the fact that it's only 21 seconds long, I guess that could come later.
Yeah.
But what was the intention behind it, making it?
Well, again, as I said, I want to make the end all goal is to make the dream here is to make a compilation of chill lo-fi hip hop tracks that I can have people listen to
here on D2M.
Yeah, sure.
Nice.
And then
stay tuned for that.
Yeah, it's probably gonna take a while, a couple of months, I guess.
That's fine.
But basically, I want like an album that I can have people listen to when we study or relax, and that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the track that I presented today is basically a cumulation of what I have learned so far.
Nice.
Like I spent the last few days like looking up tutorials on how to make lo-fi, and it began with me discovering this free plugin which you can find online called Isotope Vinyl.
Yeah.
And basically it's an effect plugin that changes that mixes your track, like the instrument that you're using, and it makes it sound old, like those recorders or recordings.
Aha.
Like 19. There's even like you can change it to 1950s, 1930s, and then you can increase the what's it called?
The scratchiness of it, the retro feel of it,
exactly,
like a phonogram.
Yeah.
Like those old record players with the big cone on top. The vinyl stuff. Yep.
And,
old record players.
And you can like add in electrical noise, mechanical noise, warp depth, and it's really cool. So that's where I began, and then I just started doing like whatever chord progressions and melodies I came up with, and that didn't go so well. I spent like the evening doing that, and you
had a little bit of a black hour there.
Yeah, like I showed my family, and my dad was like, "What, Gustav? It's out of tune." And then I listened to it again. I'm like, oh shit, no, I'm scrapping this. I'm making something new. So the next day, I spent the whole day making a new melody and a new chord progression. I was like, all right, it's sounding better. I'm starting to like this. And yeah, I didn't like that either. So I ended up scrapping the second one, and I tried a new approach. I started looking up new videos, and it turned out that that lo-fi like chill tracks, they use a lot of sax, because they use jazz. So I tried looking at. So I was thinking, okay, how do I make my music sound more jazzy? So I was like looking up tutorials on like how to make jazz chord progressions. So I took down I wrote down in my notebooks a couple of progressions, which it's really nice if you keep stuff in your notebook. You can just flip it open and you remember stuff. That's a tip.
Exactly. Keep a notebook either if you're making a podcast like us, or if you're composing something.
Yeah,
it's always a help.
I mean, you have your computer, which basically has like all the information at your fingertips, but you'll remember it better if you write it down, and you don't need the internet. Which
especially with the technology that we have today, we have Google Drive, where you can save. If you don't like paper-based notebooks, do it electronically. Helps a lot. Yep.
Right. So
yep.
I tried making jazz chord progressions, but it was really funny. It's kind of ironic because I was going that way, found chords I wanted to use, started making melody, but then the melody kind of like took over my creative process. Because I felt like that once this melody had become like strong enough, I felt like and it took on like a whole different like tone and mood that didn't fit the jazz chords. So I ended up like changing the jazz chord from like a seventh chord to a normal like triad, because it sounded better. It fit the mood of the melody. So I ended up abandoning the jazz for just like for the melody, and basically that's what I got today. And I'm really happy about it. Except like the extra instruments that I've added on, basically what I did was I continued looking through a YouTube tutorial, basically added what they added, and then got this. So it's not nearly finished completion. But
it was a good start. I mean, it already started provoking. As I said, I already started feeling some, not just melody lines, but sort of melodies for vocals and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I have a tip for you. Due to the fact that you have done a song where you have sang on it, I would suggest making a lyric for it, making it a whole track, and then making a song out of it, man, because you're onto something here.
Now that's the thing. Like those often the lo-fi like chill hip hop, they usually don't have like any lyrics specifically. They could have some vocals. Now the thing you can do is that you can add like rain in the background,
sound effects,
and you can also take like quotes from movies and add them in to like create that nice ambience. Like there was this video on YouTube, a tutorial that used like Morgan Freeman quotes. It was so fitting. It fit the ambience so well. But the main inspiration for the thing that I did today, well, I started yesterday, but the main inspiration was was this tune called Tsuyu by Idealism.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that it's just 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Uh-huh.
And it has just a short melody that it repeats throughout. It just does the same thing over and over again. Yet people really like it. So, and it's really simple, but it sounds really good. So that's kind of what I wanted to do today. I want to try to do something simple. So basically, the full picture, once this is done, is that I'm going to repeat this melody throughout, do a couple of changes so that it does sound interesting, like maybe making it more impactful at places. But basically, I wanted to repeat and repeat for like 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what my question mark is, that if you repeat something over and over again, how much change will you do, or are you intending to do? Because I guess you don't want it to make it a loop, but rather a song.
Because if you listen at the inspirational piece, Tsuyu by Idealism, they do very much the same thing over and over again. They don't really, that composer doesn't change his music really.
Mm-hmm.
What I tried doing was that I added some variations to my chords.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in one chord, I would add an E at the bottom to create a different, like, overall mood in the chord. And, like, but I would still keep, like, the same bass, but I would add some variations in the melody to just make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. Are you, well, I guess you don't. My question would have been that, are you intending to write some lyrics to it? But since it's a lo-fi track, probably not.
No, I might take some experiment with some fun, like, quotes from movies.
Or are you intending to do some background vocals? Because that bit with effects, like if you have experimented with plugins that do effects to not just your track, but let's say if you do a vocal, like a background vocal to it, and add sort of like a retro feel to it in the background, that maybe follows the same melody at some places that the instruments play, right? That makes more interesting. That makes it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
Or it has the same bass melody in the sense that it's not the same exact melody, but it is based on that.
Right.
Meaning you have certain notes in the chord that the melody is made up of, or you have the same notes in the melody that the chord is made up of, rather. That could actually change. And if you put some effects on it, like reverb, to create a more ambient feel to it, like like as if you were recording in a big jungle and you have miles and miles of stuff and it echoes back from the trees and stuff like that.
I really like reverb. It's such a nice thing to add to the instruments.
Yeah, or any. I'm talking about specifically the vocals because I feel that if you have listened to Destiny, I have put some electronic vocals in there to make it more interesting, because otherwise it was pads and a couple of fields, a couple of strings. But when I talked about in the first episode about fillers, those are what I meant, to make it more interesting. One of the fillers that I like to use is background vocals and stuff like that, so that you can, here and there. So it's not dominant,
right?
But it's there. You can hear it in the background just enough so you can have.
It's kind of like how the bells are right now.
Yes.
They're kind of like a filler.
Exactly. To me, it is, especially that they harmonize with each other. So you have that synth bass to it, right, with a run melody. I guess you did it in a run style where it arpeggio type thing. And then you have those little bell synths behind it, so it sort of goes in and out at some places, so it harmonizes with the main melody line or the main riff. Now, if you do the same thing with background vocals, that would be great. Another thing is that I would like to ask you: have you thought of, because I have, Have you thought of making, well, what I would call a 3D track?
A 3D track.
Yes, I actually, when I was experimenting with some of composing stuff today, not with the track that we heard, but with some other ones, in my software, and I guess it's present in yours as well, you can pan the sounds. So if you're listening it in either on a speaker or in headphones, you hear a certain sound either on the left or the right.
Right.
And combine tracks that one you hear on the left, one on the right, one on the middle. So you have this sort of feel, okay, this is coming from the left, right. Okay, I hear this in stereo. So if you combine that, that could be an interesting thing, especially with the fact that now this might be a stretch at this point because it's a beginning. But as I said, it provoked me to think a little bit further. But if you take that basic synth that you started with, right, and you chop that up a little bit and make it different tracks, so when you play it, it plays the same melody. But if in the software it's chopped up where the different parts of that melody is played by different synth that sound the same, but then what you do is pan them in the sense that one part you hear in the left, one on the very right. So when you listen to it, the whole thing, when you hear it, it has this, it runs down, right? But it has this back and forth between the left and the right ear type thing. And I was thinking if you put some percussion behind it or background vocals again, if you do that panning thing a little bit, that could make it a little bit more interesting, as in, okay, which, because that gives you a little bit more anticipation of which vocal am I going to hear and where. It gives the track a little bit more space to it, rather than just making a track that everything you hear in stereo and the only thing that we sort of mess with is the volume. So I was wondering if you ever, due to the fact that it's lo-fi and that's what you are interested in, so were you ever interested in making I would call this 3D, but making it a little bit more spacious in that sense?
Like, I haven't thought that far because, like, I haven't, like, personally, and like in my learning stage, I haven't gone into like mixing and like organizing where the sounds come from. I haven't thought about it too much, and I always, like, when I listen to music, like sometimes I would hear songs that would be like really like weird with their like spatial, like how they space their sounds. Like whether it's too much, like sometimes I can hear some songs that have too much in the left or right. Maybe it's just my headphones, but
maybe, who knows? It might be the composition.
So like I am a bit afraid of, like, at the moment, since I don't know much about it, I am a bit afraid of using it.
Okay.
But I think it's a good idea to just experiment with it, like see how it sounds. Yeah, I think that's a really good aspect, especially because, lo-fi it's a lot about ambience. So like that could just make it even better for the listener.
That's why I thought, because I was thinking of doing something like that when today I was like, oh, this opens up a whole new field for me, making something chill, but then chopping it up and let's see what that sounds like. Because then what you could do, right, is one of the compositional stuff that a lot of composers use is the call and respond type compositions, right? When one instrument starts and the other one sort of answers, and there is this sort of conversation between the instruments. So, and since the fact that we are both doing instrumentals at the moment, and you're doing high or lo-fi rather, you have to make it a little bit more interesting. So if I would do something like that, I would include that. But if you're afraid of it, that's fine. As I said, I'm just a guy who likes to sort of see down the road what I'm going at.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
seeing, if you're just going in the in blindly going forward and you have no goal, then it makes it harder to see, okay, what's the next step I have to take.
Yeah, I can see some like now when I made my music, I didn't know like what mood I wanted to evoke when I was starting with the chord progressions. I was just trying things out,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really have any inspiration until the third time I made it, which ended up with this track. Like I basically went in like without any like real inspiration until yesterday.
Mm-hmm. No,
So
that's great. I mean,
so
see, that's the other thing that I really like is when somebody goes and goes without any inspiration just to find out what can he or she do with something, uh, and do it without any idea of what he is going to, or he or she is going to put out.
yeah.
Because as a composer, as a music enthusiast, that's one of the things that we like to do, is experiment with sounds and try new stuff out, right?
Yeah.
So really, I think what you do here, as I said earlier, I think you're onto something here. You just need a little bit of further thinking, and then you can make this something into a really interesting song, even, or an instrumental track.
Yeah, maybe I could take it further and like do some of my own sampling. Like maybe I could like record some sounds at home. Like maybe,
especially since you play an instrument.
Yeah,
you know.
But not just that. But like I could like do something creative with something I have at home, like hitting some wood. What kind of sound can I create of that? Because
like stomp wise.
Yeah. Like maybe I could create my own like background beat with that to make it more ambient. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? All right. Well, I don't have anything about this track at the moment to say. Do you have anything to add?
Well, I guess going back to what you said earlier, when we were discussing your track, about forcing the song when you don't have inspiration. I feel that's what happened on my first two tries.
I
didn't have much inspiration. I didn't have a clear goal. I didn't see where I wanted to go. I wanted to make lo-fi, and I had this effect that I wanted to try out. So at first it was just an experimental process, but then once I was doing the melody and I was grinding through the day, it felt it. To be honest, it was really forced, and I ended up having to scrap two of my tracks that I made.
Yeah, but the other thing about scrapping, it reminds me that I heard somewhere that who is another musician who I follow, and she's a great band leader called Lizzie Hale. I don't know if guys on the other end of the internet know who she is. She's a front woman of a rock band called Hailstorm. It's heavy metal. I always think of her as the modern Joan Jett, honestly. But what she said in an interview is that you have to be willing to put 100% into your track, right? And give everything, but also be able to throw it all away.
Right.
And start from scratch. So I think what you have done here, especially two times, is you've made something that, well, first you something that you thought it was good, but then after that you were like, nope, not this, and not, so you scrapped it. So I think as a composer, that's one of the other things that we also have to sort of get used to and get to be able to handle, is if you have something but you really scrap it. Because I had songs that I made the whole thing. It was like a 2-3 minute song, instrumental track. And then I got an inspiration from somewhere, and I scrapped the whole thing. So I was back to square one. And first it sucks because like I put this, 3 days worth of work in this, but then nothing comes out of it. And this I would suggest to any music enthusiast out there. Don't be afraid to throw things away and start over. Even if it's 100 times. I know it sucks, and I know it sometimes it feels awful, but as I said before, trust your gut, even if it feels odd at first. You might scrap it, you might, just throw it all away, but you have to trust your gut.
But also, I would say like even if you throw stuff away, you're not going to use it this time, I feel like save that stuff, like put it somewhere where you can like just pick something out later if you like, because like if you save all like the melodies and like chords things you have made, if you save that like in your like somewhere on your computer, if you're working on something, you can always just come back to that, pull something out, and maybe that thing that you worked on before might not have worked then, but it might work now to something else that you're making.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Is make a archive of your
exactly.
Not just your done tracks, not just the tracks that are done and dusted and okay, I have these in the can. But when you're working, it's good to and that's a good tip actually, because I haven't done that. But it's probably helps if you have a good melody or a good chord that you came up with, and you're like, okay, I need to remember this, and then you put it all away, and then maybe a week or a month later you go back and you can use it. Although one thing I would add to that is sometimes sort those things out. So don't keep every single thing. Sometimes you have to, just like your closet. I know it's a weird analogy, but sometimes you have to go through that again. And if you didn't really use it, then throw it all away. Anything else, Gus?
I mean, I feel like we've covered everything.
Not at this point. Great, because then now comes the producer, or the interesting part for those who want to be or who are music producers at home or want to be pros in the future, because we can actually show you in a couple of minutes. We are going to show you some things, some resources that you can use if you have problems or questions need to be answered, and some stuff on the internet that will help you to solve your problems. For example, if you need to scrap something or if you don't have inspiration. So should we get into it, Gus?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, guys. Well, now we are at the last point of our discussion, which is normally a general music industry discussion. But for now, we thought that we would share stuff that can serve you as resources for composing, right, Gus?
Yes, some useful stuff.
Do you have anything that you have used when composing any tracks, or when you experimented?
One of the resources that I thought was really nice and pleasant to just listen to while I was getting on with like doing other things in my life, like walking outside for a long time. That's Music Student 101, a podcast that you can find on Spotify at least. And it's really nice. It features some professional musicians and composers, engineers, and teachers. It's a pair of guys. They're really nice to listen to. They've got a ton of experience, They explain the music theory in a very nice way, and you don't really need any visual aid to understand it. So I feel like if you're having problems with music theory, or at least if you want to learn it and you have some pre-knowledge, I would really recommend just listening to this, because even if you don't understand too much, it's still really good to have something to listen to while you're doing something else, because every like hour of extra like learning that you can get in your day will help towards like the long goal of becoming a professional producer or whatever you want to be.
Yeah. Nice. So that's for everybody, not just the music enthusiast. Now, I have something. Well, actually, I have two things that I want to show you. Especially, I want to target those guys out there who are who are making music just like ourselves. And one of them is look for a good DAW station, right? Or digital audio workstation, which is virtually a digital studio. Now, I found a site on the web called ehomerecordingstudio.com, and they have actually a list that is called the Ultimate Guide to DAW Software, and it's basically a list, an opinion-based list of different workstations that are out there and you can buy and you can use, and what the writer of the list thinks about them. So if you have a question about, because a lot of enthusiasts have this question, what software to use? There's tons of possibilities to choose out there.
Yes.
You use what do you use, Gustav?
Or FL Studio.
Okay, so you have
Fruity
FL.
Loops.
Yep, you have that. I use GarageBand because honestly, I'm on a budget, and since I'm an enthusiast, I think for beginners, and if you're especially an Apple user or a partial Apple user, it comes on iPads, iMacs, MacBooks, so it's really there to use, and it has a really great it's a really great starting point to use and to get into music production and composing and see what it is all about.
Oh,
now, yes.
One point there: if you're interested in seeing some of the capabilities of GarageBand, feel free to check out Pete's new episode, one of our side projects, where he's gonna go into one of his process of composing in GarageBand.
Exactly. We are launching a new segment here on D2M that is going to be called, well, for now, we are going to call it D2M Side Project. And the main idea behind it is, hopefully it's not just me, Gus, hint, hint. But it would be great if we could both do videos and show you what our actual music production process actually looks like in detail, because it's one point to actually talk about the tracks that we make and our opinions about them, but it would be really great if we could actually see, and you guys on the other end could see, what do we go through and what our thinking process is when we actually are making a track. So once again, it will be called D2M Side Project, and the episode will be up hopefully next week after this episode goes up. So stay tuned for that. But on the other note, I have another site on the web. What a surprise, right? Internet is a fabulous tool to use in any situation. Why this situation would be any different? I found actually a forum that is great for music producers. In fact, it is called thefutureproducers.com. And it is basically excuse me, it is basically a forum where if you have any questions that needs to be answered, or you have a problem, or you just want to see others' opinions about a certain topic, then you can go up there and read a ton of posts, a ton of articles, and everything basically that's up there. It's a great site. I really recommend it. And if you go on Facebook, they have actually a Facebook page that you can like and follow. If you're a music enthusiast and not a pro, it doesn't matter. I think it's a great resource to use. They are great. It looks great. It feels great. So, I mean, what else to say there? Anything else, Gustav, that you would like to use? Because I know you use something else to get inspiration.
Oh, yes. YouTube.
Exactly. What else, right? YouTube.
I mean, you just search what you need help with, and it's there.
Tutorial videos,
that's it.
inspirational videos, motivational videos if you have trouble motivating yourself, because let me tell you, sometimes motivation doesn't just come. Sometimes you have to grab it and get your butt out of the bed or out of the couch or whatever, but it's out there. So, guys, that will finish up the second episode of D2M, I think. We are really glad that you came back. If you were new here, then I hope, and we hope, that you will stay for the D2M side project videos and the future episodes. I'm Pete.
I'm Gus.
And this was D2M, the show of the hour. Thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
D2M, the show of the hour. Thank you to all of you who joined us on our mission today. Adios, amigos. See you on our next